Good morning. I'm Mary Moglia-Cannon, your today's service leader. My pronouns are she, her. I'm joined by Jenny Mombrea on piano and Andrew Wills on AV. Welcome members, friends, and visitors to UU of East Aurora. Happy day and good thoughts for all of our mothers, grandmothers, stepmothers, aunts, and other women living and gone from us who have had a meaningful impact on our lives. We are a community which believes our differences make us better, a place where all are welcomed, regardless of belief systems, ethnicities, race, gender, sexual orientation, neurodiversity, or economic standing. We are in a safe space. We are very excited to welcome Reverend Wayne and Joan Walder back. Some of you may recall their visit from Stewardship Sunday. Rich will take a moment now to tell us more about them. Rich?
Thank you, Mary. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Rich Moglia-Cannon. I am the UUE board chair for one more week. No, it's been a joy. It's been a joy. So I want to share some good news this morning. The Minister Search Committee has completed their work. And they selected Reverend Wayne Walder as the finalist for the minister position here at UUEA. Now, the committee also decided to invite Reverend Wayne and Joan here today so that the congregation could have a chance to meet them before the board makes the final decision. A few words about Wayne. He grew up in Buffalo and West Seneca, and he received his bachelor's degree from SUNY Geneseo. After graduation, Reverend Walder moved to Toronto and ran a construction and development company there for 20 years. In 1997, Reverend Wayne went back to school and received his Master's of Divinity degree from the University of Toronto. Just 2 years after that, he founded the Neighborhood UU Congregation in Toronto, and during the next 23 years, he helped grow it to 150 members. That's from 0 to 150 members. He retired from that position 9 months ago, but feels called to re-enter the ministry again to, quote, share the joy, worry, grief, and beauty of our precious lives. A special treat, Reverend Walder will share a little of that joy today when he leads our program. A few words about Joan. Joan has been a Montessori teacher for over 40 years, beginning her career at the Bennett Park Montessori School in Buffalo, and later owning her own school in Toronto. So we have two amazing people here today. She still loves teaching and substitutes at her former school whenever she is available. She says she never gets tired of observing, speaking to, teaching, and working with children. Joan also loves nature and all activities that involve the natural world, including walking, hiking, kayaking, swimming, biking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and travel. So special treat, Joan will be the storyteller today for our children's story. Joan and Wayne have 3 grown boys living in Montreal, Maryland, and upstate New York. Please welcome Joan and Reverend Wayne to UUEA.
Now please stand in body and spirit to say hi to the person near you. Even if you've already chatted before settling in, please take a moment to say hi to somebody new. To our participants on Zoom, hi friends, we know you're out there. You can type to each other in the chat. Before we begin, are there any other announcements? Jeff.
Just wanted to remind everyone that this coming Tuesday, May 16th, is school board elections in New York State, except for the biggest cities, and we're not among those. The polls are open in East Aurora from 7 in the morning to 9 at night at the middle school. and in Holland from 7 in the morning till 8 at night at the community center. Please think of the children when you're voting, and please be aware that there are stealth candidates out there. So please examine the biographies of the people you're voting for very carefully.
Good morning. I have tickets for the Buffalo Choral Arts Society's concert at the Riv in Wanda. It's an all-Broadway concert. Wicked, Les Mis, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mombrea, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and a few others. Those of you who know Marcia Giambroni, the director, this is her last concert. She's retiring after, I think, like 30-some years. So the tickets are $20. You can cash a check today, or I do all of the Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, all of them, you can get me that right. So thank you. Oh, yes, it's Sunday, June 11th at the Riviera in Tonawanda, 3 o'clock.
And Jeff, for anybody on Zoom, Jeff has tickets to June 11th. It's a Buffalo Choral Arts, and he is one of the people in the chorus. So that's really the big draw, not Broadway. I have 2 announcements before we begin. Just a reminder that next week is the annual meeting. Please come. We are voting. If you can't make it, please provide your proxy to someone else. And then just a reminder that this Wednesday is our special program with Chris Spicer from Planned Parenthood of Western New York. We're doing a special evening on reproductive rights. I begin this service by acknowledging that our nation was largely built on the ancestral land of Native nations and the labor of enslaved peoples. May we persevere to achieve a clear understanding of our shared past and utilize these lessons learned for good and for progress. Now, Jenny will play our prelude, The Lullaby of Spring by Donovan. And it's actually a duet, which excuse me. Our opening words this morning include a little bit of a personal story. So people are attracted to UU churches for a variety of reasons. And Rich and I were drawn to the commitment to activism. As you may know, we hail from Chicago and New York respectively, and we both traveled extensively for work and had very few ties in Rochester. And so it was an easy decision to move here for our unborn grandkids. Around the time of the move, we found ourselves with a series of losses. Both our dads passed, mine from Alzheimer's and Rich's had been horribly beaten. My sister was struggling with a disease that caused her to become addicted to opioids. And we found her dead in her home. Not long after, my brother was with pulmonary fibrosis failed. My cousin was taking a shortcut home and was killed by a train. And one of my best friends had suffered a brain aneurysm. Our world seemed to shrink in an instant, and that made my decision to retire very simple. When we moved across the street, I was still grappling with the loss of those closest to us, and also with the loss of my own strong work identity. In this new place, I wasn't quite sure what my world would become or what my role would be. When I look back, I can't pinpoint to one Sunday service or one person who made the difference, who helped our hearts heal. It was the amalgamation of so many that make you UEA a community. It was Sue's gift for sharing like she has known you for years. Judy's way of inspiring activism to keep us busy. Jim and Keith's easygoing gestures of friendship. It was also Jeff and Rosie's voices, both of which still bring tears to my eyes. Mary Beth and PJ's easy laughter, and Lori and Jeanette's cards, which always seem to show up just at the right time. Because of these gifts then, and frankly, all of your gifts now, we find the room to be ourselves here. It is here we are accepted, here we are welcomed, and most importantly, we are seen. So while we still appreciate the activism we came for, we've stayed for the connections that make space for us and allow us to hold up others in return. It comes full circle, doesn't it? When we serve others' needs, we fill the deepest needs of self. I'll leave you with a poem. From a collection of poems we never knew we needed by Becky Helmsley. She sat at the back and they said she was shy. She led from the front and they hated her pride. They asked her advice, then questioned her guidance. They branded her loud, then were shocked by her silence. When she shared no ambition, they said it was sad. So she told them her dreams, and they said she was mad. They told her they'd listen, then covered their ears, and gave her a hug while they laughed at her fears. And she listened to all of it, thinking she should be the girl they told her to be, best as she could. But one day, she asked herself what was best for herself, instead of trying to please everyone else. So she walked to the forest and stood with the trees. She heard the wind whisper and dance with the leaves. She spoke to the willow, the elm, and the pine. She told them what she'd been told time after time. She told them she felt she was never enough. She was either too little or far, far too much. Too quiet or too loud, too fierce or too weak, too wise or too foolish, too bold or too meek. Then she found a small clearing surrounded by firs, and she stopped and she heard what the trees said to her. And she sat there for hours, not wanting to leave, for the forest said nothing. It just let her breathe. So whatever our circumstances, whatever brings you here, may you find this place as a clearing that surrounds you and lets you breathe. Andrew. going to play this song once and then we're going to play the video. So that's so that we sing more. So.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
So at this time, I'm going to ask the children, can the children come up? I know this is a little different from what you usually do, but I'm going to sit in a chair up here, and I'm asking you to come up and sit here around the chair. Could you come up? I have a story for you. I'm so glad you're here. For a while, I didn't see any children, and I thought, who am I going to tell the story to? Would you mind sitting on the carpet? Would that be okay? That's great. Thank you. Are you going to hold that for me? So, sometimes when Wayne's doing a service, can you face me so I can see your beautiful faces? Sometimes when Wayne does a service, and he's going to be speaking, he usually speaks to the adults. I understand you're not going to class today, but he usually speaks to the adults when the children leave. And I don't know if you know, but when the minister or the speaker speaks, there's usually, there's a theme. And the theme for the children is always the same as for the adults. So we're going to be talking about some of the same things that the adults are going to be talking about. I guess today you'll be here, but sometimes you go off, right? So they're learning something and you're learning something. At least that's the hope. So when Wayne said to me, Joan, if you got a story about kindness and grace is kind of like when somebody treated you really nicely, especially somebody important. Sometimes it's a teacher or somebody who's in charge. And as soon as he asked me, because I've been a teacher for many, many years, and I usually know a lot of storybooks for children, I immediately thought of this story. But this isn't a book. It's a true story that actually happened to me. And it happened to me when I was 8 years old. Is there anybody here who's around 8 years old? Are you 8 years old? Oh, good. So maybe you can relate to my story. You're 6. Okay, well, 6, 4.5, 11. Okay, so, okay. Well, at the end, I'm going to ask you a question. So let's see how well you can listen. Okay. All right. So this is my story. I was 8 years old. My family was a very big family. And at the time, we were 8 children in my family. There were more to come later. But at that time, we were 6 kids at that time. And my mother had her hands full because she ran a flower business and it was summer. And she had all the kids that went to school home from school, trying to keep us busy. So she made the decision that my sister Terry and I should go to overnight camp. Has anybody here been to overnight camp? Okay, so you know what that's like. So we went to this camp and they told us it's going to be great. There are horses, you get to swim every day, there'll be campfires, and it's going to be so much fun. So off we go to camp, and we get out to this camp, which seemed very far away from home. And we got out there, and there was this huge cabin. It was as big as this room, I think. It was huge. And there were beds all along that side and beds all along this side. And some of the girls were in bunk beds. It was all girls. It was a girls' camp. And some of the kids were in bunk beds. And my sister and I, she was 7, I was 8. And you know, my mother told us, you go to your grandmother's and stay overnight, and you love that. But it wasn't anything like going to my grandmother's. There were girls there that were a lot older than we were. And those girls had gone to camp before. And some of them were at camp all summer, so they knew all about camp. And we came into camp, and we didn't know anything about camp, and we didn't know anybody. And frankly, it wasn't what I imagined. And then they took us on this tour, and we went to see the horses. Oh my gosh. I mean, I was small for my age, and the horse's legs were so, I was scared. I was a little bit scared of the horses. And then we did have bathrooms in the cabin, but they showed us these other bathrooms that were called outhouses. Does everybody know what an outhouse is? It's like a small house with a toilet, and it stinks, frankly. And I imagined that there were spiders in every corner. And it's kind of dark because there's only a little window maybe at the top. So it just wasn't shaping up to be what I thought camp was going to be. And so anyway, here we are at camp, and frankly, I was homesick. And my sister and I would lie in our beds at night, and we'd hold hands, and all these big girls, they had all these secret things that they shared, and they were always laughing, and I was afraid they were going to make fun of me because I didn't know anything about camp. Well, anyway, let me just tell you what happened this one day. So it was it was supposed to be a special day. All the older girls were going to put on a show. And we walked kind of far from the cabin, and we were sitting around where we were going to have a campfire later. And then they put on these little skits. And they were actually fun. The skits were kind of cool and fun. But I had to go to the bathroom. I really had to pee. And I was sitting there, and we were far away from the toilets that flush and take everything away. We were by those bathrooms that were called outhouses that were stinky and full of spiders. And I was not going in there. I just wasn't going to go into those bathrooms. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to hold it. You can imagine what that would be like. And all of a sudden, I just couldn't hold it anymore. And I peed my pants. I've never told anybody this story before, but I peed my pants. So I'm sitting on this bench, and I was afraid everybody was going to find out. And I was afraid those big girls were going to make fun of me too. And so I'm sitting there, and I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to climb under a rock and stay there for the rest of my life. And so suddenly, I think I kind of saw the counselors talking to each other. And then one of the counselors came over to me, and she said, you know, it's getting cold out, and I wondered if you wanted to walk back to the cabin with me and get a sweater, because I'm going to get a sweater. I thought, okay. I wasn't sure if she knew I had wet my pants. I wasn't sure. But anyway, off we went back to the cabin. And when we got to the cabin, she said to me, maybe you want to change into some pants out of your shorts because it's getting cold. And so I kind of thought then she knew, but I was really ever so grateful because I went and took off my wet pants and I put on some dry pants. And then we walked back and we had a campfire and sang, and it was kind of nice. But, you know, today the adults are going to talk about kindness and grace. And when he said to me, can you think of a story about kindness and grace? I just thought of that counselor. Because wasn't that nice of that counselor to, the whole time we were walking back, she never said anything to me about me wetting my pants. And she never got mad at me. And I just thought she was so kind. And you know, we stayed with my sister last night, Terry, who was in camp with me. And I said, do you remember that time I wet my pants at camp? And she said, I don't remember that at all. But I remember because it was important to me that counselor was so kind to me. And so I learned then that there are ways to be with each other. And I hope that we all can learn to be more kind and gracious with each other. What do you think? Could we? Could we be nice and not make fun of other people and just be kind? Can you imagine if you wet your pants at camp? Ugh. Anyway, that's my story about being graceful and kind. And maybe you have some of your own stories. It's nice to meet you. I hope I'll see you again. And now you're not going off to your class today, so.
But Carly, I think, is going to take the kids into the reception area. And she may have something for you guys to do if you'd like to go with her. And this is a little out of sequence, but I'd like to light the chalice. We gathered this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
It takes a while to get it. I've always found graciousness as being filled with grace. We see a graceful skater and we can't look away. We see a graceful act of kindness and we're moved. We hear sounds that meld beautifully together to become graceful music. Experiencing grace stops time in a sense. It's a lovely benefit of being mindful, being present in this moment. And it's a pleasure to be graceful or to have someone be graceful to us. And I bet all of you have felt grace at some time in your life. It could have been at the birth of a child, the compassionate death of a loved one, nature's display of a perfect day, falling in love. We've all felt the wonderful feeling of just being filled with grace. Your story was graceful. Sometimes we don't have to do anything. Grace just shows up. George Sanders, the writer, spoke at the University of Chicago's commencement and said, "I feel corny, and I don't know what to do with that feeling, but what I regret most in my life is my failure to be gracious." He called it his failure of kindness, his failure to become a kind self. Grace is lovely, and I'm sure at times we've all felt it, but I can easily recount the failures of kindness and grace in my own life. They're the times I never responded to an email, a simple gracelessness. The times I was too busy to acknowledge and accept fragile people who were coming up to me, graceless. The times when I was so busy preparing what I wanted to say that I wasn't listening to what everybody else was saying, graceless, totally graceless. There are times I have offered advice that was unwelcomed, and times when I mansplained out of ignorance and arrogance, graceless. It's easy to be graceless when we're filled with ourselves and the remains of our days. And it's not always easy to find or notice grace. Yet it happens all the time. Someone sent me a gracious request this week. They asked if I'd be willing to spend a little time in the hospital with them and offered me all sorts of ways I could decline. Took me a long time to notice how graceful that was. Joan put some cookies on the car seat. I missed that one completely. Another person gave me an unexpected compliment. Another let me know that what I had said made them in some way moved. I got those. You know, graciousness helps us to feel alive. And staying in love with life is important. Staying in love with life is very important. So I've discovered a few magic words that help me a little bit. Whenever I remember, I say, "Tell me more." When I'm listening to someone, it makes me curious and my heart actually opens when I say, "Tell me more." I found the person who hears those words, "tell me more," often will tell me more. And the conversation goes a little deeper. We understand what someone wants. We know a little bit more about them. We know a little bit more about us. When you feel a good conversation could go deeper, but you're not sure how to guide it there, and you don't know how to ask, try it. Tell me more. You can say it so quietly. Tell me more. I've used other words too to help me be graceful or remember it. Sadly, I don't hear these words too often. I'm sorry. And the second part, what can I do to make it right? I don't think I've heard this expression more than 5 times in my entire life. What can I do to make it right now that I've messed you up? Not just the expected, "I'm sorry," or the flippant, "sorry," or the passive-aggressive, "I'm sorry you got hurt." Think about what it would mean if someone said to you, "I am so sorry. What can I do to make it right? What can I do to make it right?" We might say to ourselves, "Wow, this person really is sorry." We might ask for a simple act of restoring trust, or just having them say that might be enough. You know, in the Jewish tradition, an apology requires 3 things: the apology, the request to make things right, and the promise to never do it again. But I think I'd be happy with the 2. I'm sorry. How can I make it right? And this last set of graceful words that I've been using, can I help you? It's different from the clerk saying, can I help you, meaning, can I sell you something? They're different from, I know where you can get some help. And different from, if you need that kind of help, you're a poor soul. Can I help you is a personal and intimate offer, a way of saying, I want to be part of your struggle a little bit at least, which of course is offering to be part of your life. And sometimes when we say it, even if we can only help for a moment, it helps us let go of what we're carrying inside. I have been made whole by the help of others. I bet you have too. Tell me more. I'm sorry. What can I do to make it right? Can I help you? These words are filled with grace, and when we use them, they make us gracious. They make us graceful. And I wonder if we'd sing a song about grace. Would you, Jenny? It's a song you sing all the time, so I'm sure you know it. For all that is our life. Do you know it? Sometimes, though, grace can be equated with weakness. It can seem passive. It's subtle, and we can question if grace is enough when things are going to hell in a handbasket and when others are needy and in desperate situations. Is grace enough? When people are killed, as happened in Buffalo just a year ago, you might not know that someone shot up a Unitarian Universalist congregation in 2008. When wars go on without end, when poverty surrounds more than a third of the people on the planet, when life is not fair, is anything enough? Yet I know that when I feel grace, the power of being alive, of being connected with others, of feeling life teaching me, I can feel a power that is not power over, but power with others. And power with others emboldens us to be able to change the things that we see that we don't like. But to use the great power inherent in grace, we have to feel it. We have to stop our headlong rush into the next moment, quiet our internal dialogue, and notice another person, the beauty of a day, the goodness that we feel. I was in a hospital room with a congregant recently. He was going to die that day by medically assisted death, which is now legal in Canada. The small hospital room was filled with about 12 people, mostly family. There was a delicate moment when we did not know what to do or how to act. I bet you've been there. I paused, took a breath, and opened to grace, feeling that I was not alone, helped me slowly inch toward Bruce's bed. I kind of slid over. With my smile, I asked if he wanted me to do something. He and his wife, Terry, and nothing was scripted, so they nodded. I filled a small bowl with water and said a prayer, a poem by William Blake. You probably know it. Joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. It is right that it should be so. We were made for joy and woe. And when this we rightly know, through the world we safely go. I took the water and caressed Bruce's face, and I blessed him with the power in that room, my power and life's power, love's power. I blessed his wife and his daughter, his son and his granddaughter. Then I suggested Bruce could offer a blessing to his loved ones. At first he modeled what I did. He blessed his wife by caressing her cheek with water, and then his son and his daughter. When it got to his teenage daughter, though, he started splashing her. He just kind of started throwing the water around. And at this point, his joy in grief was so great, the sharing so intimate, the room so filled with love. He began blessing the doctors and the nurses too. He blessed the doctor who was going to end his life, and the nurse and the ethics monitor and the 3 interns who had never been to a medically assisted death before. Water was flying all over the room. Poignant laughter and grief together filled that room. He revealed his true nature, and that put everyone at ease. Grace and power are not separate. I believe in that room we all felt the affirming power of grace. He finished the blessings that he did, and he told the doctor to go ahead, and he died in that room, a most beautiful death. There was power and grace in that room. You know, we need to treat each other like that, gracefully. Jewish theologian Martin Buber said, we need to treat each other like the beautiful people we hope we are, not people we want to manipulate. We need to do this because in our troubled and broken and often confusing world, it can be tempted to pull back into a defensive posture and to insulate ourselves. That's the furthest thing from what we need to do. And I think we come to places like this because we want to be encouraged and inspired and sustained. We need people who feel grace in order to change themselves, because that's what changes the world. Tell me more. I'm so sorry. How can I make it right? Can I help you? They're just ways to gracefully connect. I encourage you to start with words when you want to be graceful, that you might hear from others, and then words will come to you. They'll magically come to you. You'll know what to say. You'll know what to do. And then everyone becomes the sisters and brothers that we hoped long ago they would become. And we become the people we've always wanted to become. And thank you so much for listening. I wonder if we could sing together. The song We Give Thanks. It's number 1010 in the teal.
Please join me by saying the extinguishing the chalice words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Jenny will play Flower Duet by Delabese.